Yeah, you want to understand spices to spice up your life? Well, I tell you what, there are many ways to do that. I sort of have my own ideas how to do that, but I rather don't share them here. I today will focus on how to use spices to spice up your cooking. So I will keep this very simple, but super useful, super informative to you so that you have immediate success when cooking with spices. I'm Walter Trupp. I worked and managed and owned and run some of the best restaurant kitchens in Europe, and now run my own cooking school for the last 12 years. So many of my students ask me that they want to understand spices better. It's a big topic, so we'll condense it down to the very, very basics so that you immediately know everything that you need to know about spices in your cooking. Think of them in two categories. Are they seeds or are they something else? Seed spices is something that could grow into another plant. Think about cumin, coriander, pepper, cardamom, allspice, nutmeg, cloves, and so on and so on. I know it's a very broad category, but why do I want them to treat them differently? Well, seed spices contain fats and oils, and lots of them. Those oils are extremely sensitive. If they're exposed to air and light, they go off, often within hours of exposure. They go stale and they start to taste rancid. They don't actually spoil your dish rather than improve it. Spices that are not seeds, like cinnamon, saffron, paprika, turmeric, ginger, and so on, they don't contain much fat or very little, and hence they do not behave the same way. They don't go rancid. The worst that can happen to them is that they lose their flavor little by little and end up being pretty much tasteless. So that's the only difference. The other one is toasting or roasting spices. Now, seed spices get better. They change their flavors. They can intensify for the better. They can become milder. They become a bit rounder. It's a bit like peanuts, you know. Peanuts, when you eat them raw, they taste pretty boring, but when you roast them, make peanut butter like that, boy, that tastes pretty good. Nothing comes close. That's the same with seed spices. Non-seed spices like paprika, turmeric, saffron, and so on, they just burn and spoil when you toast them. They don't improve with toasting or roasting or heating, you know, in a dry heat, because often they just even burn because they contain a lot of sugar. Now, back to seed spices, because now we only talk about seed spices so that you understand it now. So stay with me, because if you do take your cooking serious, you need to listen to what's coming now. The one thing you do not ever buy pre-ground seed spices. You need to grind them yourself. You can also blend them like into a curry paste, that's no problem, but they need to be fresh, they need to be whole. And you just break them up just before cooking. I know most of you use that whole pre-ground stuff, but this is the day of change. You promise? Okay. So, some of you want more convincing. Well, that's fair enough. Pre-ground spices usually already have lost lots of the flavor because on the supermarket shelves they're exposed to bright light. That literally kills them. Then you buy such spices, you open them up, and it's a bit like opening a bottle of wine, or you let it stand open for months and weeks, and then all the flavors disappear. And it goes with spices even worse because they turn rancid and stale. Now, the other problem we have with pre-ground spices is that they're obviously a great money spinner for supermarkets, as they can stretch them with other cheaper and tasteless ingredients like ground up olive leaves. So you want to value for money, and you buy only whole spices. And I invite you to do a little test. Get some pre-ground spices from a jar that ideally was open for a few weeks and you had it in a dry store shelf. Then you take some whole spices like I do here with coriander. Then you get another batch of coriander, and that one you toast. So how long do you toast them for? Well, that's a great question. Well, till they start to smell really lovely and get a really fragrant, nice smell. Till they start to release some of the amazing aromas. Now, don't overdo it, otherwise they burn. Now then you grind the untoasted batch and set it aside, then you grind the toasted batch, and then you start smelling of the pre-ground supermarket stuff, followed by the untoasted, followed by the toasted, and you will realize how amazingly better the freshly ground coriander smells. The pre-ground stuff you probably don't even recognize as coriander, while the toasted one or the one freshly ground is just on a total other level in terms of smell and aroma. And I know you will have that question in mind, so I'm sorry that I jump in. Do you always have to toast your seed spices before grinding? No, you can also toast them once you ground them up already. You can toast them mixed together with other spices already, it's no problem. You just have to be very careful, as ground spices obviously have much more surface and tend to burn much quicker than when they're whole. You also don't have to toast it, for example, when you rub your spices onto a meat, like when you marinate it and then you roast the meat, and through that you also roast the spices. I know I told you that pre-ground seed spices go off quickly, while whole seed spices, on the other hand, they last you for years if you store them in a dark place at room temperature. Now I hope that all makes sense. I look forward to seeing you again. So check out my other video on herbs to learn about them. It really complements this video so that you learn cooking totally from its foundation. That's the last tip I give you today. When I grind my spices, they're obviously not going to turn out that fine as they would be probably in a blender. And that's not the biggest problems. They can be a bit rough. They actually add some really nice texture to your dish, okay? So I rather use a heavy mortar, heavy pestle, and as heavier the pestle is, as better it sort of breaks it up and grinds it up, yeah? And then you just add that to your food. But if you want to grind it finer, you can get yourself a so-called spice grinder. You can, put my chef's hat on, I'll do that now. So, you can put a blender, but it needs to be the right blender. You know what I mean? If you get those cheap blenders, all they do, they whisk a lot of air up, and then the spices are all in the top here, yeah? And they don't ever break up. So you need a grinder that drags things to the floor. And yeah, I'm just gonna do that quickly now. So just take those spices and just put them in here. And then basically all I need to do is check if it's all on, yeah. And then I just, shut up. What? Now tell me. Anyway, I think I'm gonna have a glass of wine now. That's only coffee, isn't it? Thank you.